Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to ACE Thinktank Roundtable at SIEW 2020. My name is Nadila Sharni. I will be your host for today to guide you through the events today. We have a session titled Designing Affordable and clean energy for resilient energy system and ASEAN communities. So I'll brief you today before we go through the sessions. We have three main agenda today. We will have a keynote speech and short comments from the ambassadors, and then we will have a scene setting preparation presentations from our speakers. And then we will have panel moderated discussions as the last sessions. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Nuki Agia Utama to deliver his opening remarks. Please, Dr. Nuki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sani. Ms. Damilola Ogunbi, the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy. His Excellency Morten Hugland, Ambassador of Norway for ASEAN. His Excellency John Lambe, UK Ambassador to ASEAN. Distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all from Jakarta. On behalf of ASEAN Centre for Energy, I am very pleased to welcome all of you today at the ACE Thinktank Roundtable, Singapore International Energy Week 2020, with the topic of designing affordable and clean energy for resilient energy system in ASEAN communities. First, I would like to congratulate Singapore Energy Market Authority for an excellent event arranged this week amidst the challenging circumstances due to this COVID-19 pandemic. It is also great to hear that in the opening day on Monday, Minister Chan Chung Sin highlighted Singapore's commitment to pursuing a low carbon future, which is critical for our collaborative efforts as well at regional level in ASEAN. We are very grateful for the strong support and opportunity provided by EMA, in particular to Mr. Jonathan Goh, the Director, External Relations Department, Energy Planning and Development Division, and also his wonderful team, as it allows us to share our work progress in ASEAN and engage the discussion and collaboration with you all. Ladies and gentlemen, this time we bring affordable and clean energy as the focus of our discussion, since this topic has an utmost importance for many reasons. For example, the declining price of renewable energy, the existing and incoming energy climate-related problem which ASEAN needs to solve, and the opportunity of green recovery path from the current pandemic. Providing affordable and clean energy is not a unique case for ASEAN, but also globally, which is translated as Sustainable Development Goal 7. Hence, we are very excited to synchronize our effort and collaboration with global initiative. We thank Ms. Damilola on the Sustainable Energy for All as the UN Ambassador on effort on SDG 7, joined with us for this event today. What makes it become more special for us in ASEAN? It is very timely to discuss affordable and clean energy effort that is now ongoing in the region. Not only it becomes the regional focus which is underlined by ASEAN Plan of Action on Energy Cooperation or APAEC 2016 to 2025, but also because ASEAN countries also commit to support the global energy transition movement as well as sustainable development goals implementation. The second phase of the APIC document itself will be launched at the ASEAN Minister on Energy meetings or AMEM next month. Providing affordable and clean energy is not an easy task, especially taken into account the diversity of economy and energy resource availability within ASEAN. But I believe it is not impossible to be done. With various economic background and challenges, both at national and regional levels, it is important for ASEAN to map all the possible options on affordable and clean energy to create a secure and resilient energy system in the future, especially for all member states. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an excellent lineup of speakers and panelists who are well known in their expertise. But beyond that, all of speakers who are joining us today are also representing the great potential for the collaboration to tackle this issue together. We will have Ms. Ngo Thuy Huynh, Deputy Director General of the Oil and Gas and Coal Department, Ministry of Industry and Trade, MOIT Vietnam, to share the effort on designing affordable and clean energy in Vietnam, representing the common situation that we have here in the region. And we have also Dr. Isabel Delovin-Voze, the head of COP26 in Southeast Asia, who are going to share from the experience in UK, giving the perspective from the developed country. Then together with our two speakers, we will engage the discussion with our panelists. Ms. Elizabeth Tinshat, Project Manager of the Clean, Affordable and Secure Energy for Southeast Asia. Mr. Todd Moss, the Executive Director, Energy for Growth Hub. And also Mr. Lim Yo Keong, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnership and Origination from SEMCOP. As the scene setting for the discussion, we are very pleased to inform you that Ms. Nadila Sani, ACE researcher, will present our new policy brief on affordable and clean energy. Then later, before the end of the event today, we will also present you the sneak peek of our upcoming publication, the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, or AO6, the one and the only official publication on the energy landscape profile and projection in ASEAN, which is to be launched at the 38th ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting this November. These two publications and our roundtable this morning are among few examples of our work as a think tank, data and knowledge hub, and also as a catalyst in enhancing energy connectivity and market integration in ASEAN to achieve energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for all. I hope that today our roundtable could cultivate ideas and enlighten us to provide solutions to solve challenges ASEAN has in providing affordable and clean energy to its people. But what is also important, that is also cultivate the possible collaboration amongst us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful for the strong support provided by the government of Norway through the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, the first energy and climate nexus project in ASEAN. Thank you, Ambassador Morten Huklen, Ambassador of Norway for ASEAN, for joining us today. I know it is very early morning for you in Oslo, right? But it is an honor for us to have you joining and also for your strong and continued support for ASEAN. I also personally thank to Ambassador John Lambe, UK Ambassador to ASEAN, to also joining with us this morning. We do hope this will be a milestone for our collaboration as well as on energy climate nexus in ASEAN. Ladies and gentlemen, this roundtable is being organized by ACE with the collaboration support from the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project and also ASEAN German Energy Program, or AGEP. And we do hope to extend our collaboration as well as with the UK. Lastly, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to all speakers for their contribution to the discussion today and all of you from wherever you are now participating in this roundtable. I also want to thank Emma once again for the excellent work in this event. I wish a great success of SIEW 2020. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I wish you have insightful discussion during today's meeting. Thank you. Back to you, Sunny.
Thank you, Dr. Nuki, for such kind words to open our event. Now, before we begin, I would like to inform of the audience here that we have a really big crowd today. We have 600 registrants to join the event. And for that, we have prepared a short call in the SIEW platform to hear your opinion about the affordable and clean energy in ASEAN. So please go to the CU platform and you can find the poll there in our page that you can put your vote and then we will discuss the results for the panel moderator discussions later. So now we will have the next agenda. We will have a keynote speech from Her Excellency Damilola Ogunbiyi. She is a CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and also co-chair of UN Energy. She will be presenting the decade of actions for the SDGs. So let's hear Ms. Ogunbiyi on this topic.
Good morning, distinguished speakers and participants. My name is Damilola Ogunbiyi. I'm the CEO and Special Representative of the Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All. It's my pleasure to be here participating in this event organized by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Centre for Energy during the Singaporean International Energy Week. I would also like to congratulate the ASEAN Centre for Energy for organizing such an important, timely dialogue and continue to play an important role in promoting sustainable energy cooperation across the ASEAN region. I'd really like to start with, what's going on currently and what the trends show. And the truth of the matter is we're really not on track to achieve SDG 7. COVID has impacted a lot in terms of our progress. However, we were not going to achieve SDG 7 if we had continued at the momentum. And this being the decade of action, it's really important that we take up this momentum and use this moment to actually reset and actually work on recovering better to focus on renewable energy and also energy efficiency. ASEAN has considerably improved in terms of energy access. There are about 789 million people globally that don't have access to electricity, and there's probably about another 2 billion that don't have access to clean cooking. And really glad to say that a lot of impact has actually happened in the ASEAN countries compared to the African countries. So there's been a significant amount of energy access, but we also have to think about energy for development and energy for economic growth. So this is the picture in terms of ASEAN now. This focus has really kind of gone really deep into clean cooking. And this is because we feel that energy access in ASEAN compared to Africa will be achieved by 2050. However, clean cooking has got some shocking statistics, but still 218 million people not having access to it. So what is it to recover better with sustainable energy? Like we said, COVID has meant a lot of, economic downfall, high levels of jobs have been lost, and increased strain on the public health system that in some countries were not very strong in the first place. So what we want to make sure is that as countries recover better, they focus on kind of economic gains, rolling in the stimulus, investing in new technologies, and rethinking what does post-recovery economies look like and societies when they're more green. And this is one of the key focus areas in terms of, centralized and decentralized energy as well. A lot more investment into renewables just because of the economic growth you can get from that. And we're hoping that a target of about 25%, of the stimulus packages in a lot of countries can go into renewables as a way to quickly get to an economic sound economy. The other key thing that we recognize is promoting localization, especially in terms of the value chains of renewable energy and energy efficient equipment. There's a lot of things that could be done in country, in continent to make sure that kind of value chain is not broken, especially when we have pandemics. So what we've shown here is kind of like just upstream value chains that can be manufactured or have large scale assembly facilities within the country. And this takes in consideration utility scale power, distributed solutions, household and businesses as well. It's important to show that to close the gap is going to cost a lot of money, basically. For ASEAN, we see it costing something about 27 billion annually to achieve this gap. But more importantly, with the investments put in there into the renewable energy, there is an additional value of about 25 billion. Apart from that, there's obviously just huge benefits in terms of job creation, agriculture, health, economic diversity, and gender that might not be clear, straightforward. But I mean, I think one of the figures that are, they're very staggering is just how much more jobs you can have compared to fossil equivalents. It's normally almost 3 times the number of jobs. The amount of people that you get going to your health clinics and wanting health services as well is quite huge. And to be honest, if we break it down into this COVID moment right now, we have to make sure that there's enough energy that actually covers the cold chains to do with vaccinations. So it's important that those are actually green and sustainable as well, instead of just putting a generator next to every health center, because this has to run on a 24-hour basis. The other part of it is that the economic diversity happens where there's more focused renewable energy and energy efficiency, and less focus on just fossil. And then, last but not least, it's very, very important for gender as well. This is the quickest way to get women in particular earning a lot more money to be on par with their male counterparts. We believe from the data that shows that if you give a woman sustainable energy, she could earn almost 59% more than what she currently earns, which will put her on par with her male counterpart. So to capture this, ASEAN governments just really need to address some key things, and we've tried to break it down, I believe, into 8 key areas. Promoting the ease of doing business. Obviously, the reduction of time it takes to obtain permits, import duties, promote entrepreneurs are really, really key in terms of all this, cross-border trade. The less time it takes to do that, the more investment is likely to come into the country. Investing in energy efficiency is obviously key as well. And more important, an estimated about 2.4 million jobs can actually be created with investment. And this is just Southeast Asia alone, apart from the obvious climate benefits in terms of reducing greenhouse emissions. And then enhancing policies and regulatory frameworks. Again, it's really, really important that developing the right regulation for both off-grid and on-grid development is key. And then empowering the regulators and the raw electrification agencies and just the government bodies that are in charge of this to be able to work quicker and faster, and also paying them the right amount of money for a lot of work that they're putting into it. The other point is transitioning to cost-reflective tariff. There's a lot, it's not just a Southeast Asian problem. There's a lot of countries that put a subsidy on the electricity they serve through their grids. But, trying to get to a point of cost reflectiveness will make renewables a lot more attractive, will enhance utilities that historically would have been performing poorly. And there'll be a lot more relief for the government to spend on other different things like health and possibly agriculture. The 5th point is trying to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. It's back to what we were saying in terms of cost-reflective tariffs. The more money there is, more money can be spent on renewables and more cost-effective fuels. And more importantly, it then puts the kind of even playing field within renewables and fossil fuel equivalents. Declaring a moratorium on new coal is, firmly in line with the Paris Agreement. And again, it also shows that, new coal investments are actually more expensive than renewable investments. And we're also very, very cognizant that when we say new coal or remove fuel subsidy, it's part of a larger plan, right? It's part of a plan from now to 2050, how you are going to actually transition into clean energy. And we do firmly understand that there might be fuels as transitional fuels you use on the way there, but the focus still has to be zero carbon by 2050. And it brings me to my two last points on this slide on what ASEAN governments can do. Investment data is key. Understanding and prioritizing the communities and seeing what is the least cost way to develop those communities are important, and making it publicly accessible. So it becomes investment documents for private sector who wants to come in, which again includes more investment into your country, which means more jobs. And then I guess finally, investment in people. You need to ensure that there's adequate training and a talent pool to be able to use when companies come, or companies within the countries. Should be an increased focus on women in terms of decentralizing clean energy, and also probably most important, ensuring that the capacity of government institutions to cope with the demand is there, and also the continuous training they need. The other things I would really like to, quickly talk about is the fact that for the first time in 40 years, there's a high-level dialogue on energy. It's come at the right time. It allows us to make new commitments and to follow through on those commitments by implementation. The high-level dialogue will be hosted at the General Assembly in 2021, and my role is high-level champion. So really, really looking forward to working with all of you to making sure that event, but beyond that event, is a very, very special moment to reset how everybody sees the energy sector. Next slide. One of the key things about the outcomes of the high-level dialogue will be this notion that we're calling energy compacts. Again, this is based on new commitments by governments and multi-stakeholders. Why this is really needed is the fact that a lot of the agreements that currently are set are based on just carbon or emissions. But as we know, providing power to people is also very important, even if you're not a high emission state, and also providing clean cooking. So it's really important for us to kind of build new collaborations, working on the government level, the city levels, and also the company levels, to make sure we all come together and have very, very clear energy targets and focus on really leaving no one behind. One of the key things is that this is now or never. We really, really need to seize this opportunity to recover better. We need to make sure we do it in line with, like we said, the Paris Agreement and the nationally determined contributions, which sometimes don't even have energy and the power sector in there. We need the ASEAN Cooperation Framework is already well established to promote energy strategies, and we are very, very we would be very, very happy to work in terms of changing things from strategies and documents into implementation. And when I say we, I mean Sustainable Energy for All, which is the organization I represent. So I guess finally, today's decisions will impact on tomorrow's ability to recover better in the long term. We now see that recovering better with sustainable energy is the least cost way to develop, but more importantly, it makes sure we have resilient economies and also creates new green jobs. So that's it for me. I look forward to, like I said, working with you all. Please go on the SE4 website to find out at least about this presentation and all the other great work we're doing. I'd like to say that I said it over and over again in the presentations, but we really need new commitments and a new implementation focus for us to achieve SDG 7 by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, for the highlight on the progress of SDGs in ASEAN. Now, I would like to invite the Ambassador John Lambie, UK Ambassador to ASEAN, to give a short comment regarding the topic.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the other distinguished panelists and to all the guests. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I'd like to say a big thank you to the ASEAN Centre for Energy for organising today's event. I thought I would follow what Damilola was just talking about by just saying a few things about some of the current trends that we see globally and in Southeast Asia on renewable energy and clean energy, a little bit about UK engagement in ASEAN, a little bit about the UK's own experience of making the transition from coal to cleaner energy, and then finish by saying a few words about the path from now to COP26 in a year's time, which we are co-hosting in the UK. So on current trends, I think we see that it's really clear, as Damilola was just saying, that to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, the global transition to clean power needs to accelerate. We think it needs to happen 4 times faster than is happening currently. And that's particularly important in Southeast Asia, where energy demand is growing. And as you know, we've just heard, the move to clean energy brings all kinds of benefits. It's not just about emissions reduction, it's also about energy security, accessibility, and affordability. And I think here in this region, the economic case is getting stronger every day. It's cheaper to build new renewables right across Southeast Asia than it is to operate existing coal plants, let alone to develop new coal plants. And as Damilola was saying, that also avoids the risk of stranded assets if we invest in new fossil-fired power stations now. So as technologies evolve, these costs are going to continue to drop. And it's a growth industry. It brings all kinds of benefits, job creation, new technologies, the opportunity for economies to be in a leading position as these technologies evolve and grow around the world. So we think, we saw here before COVID in Southeast Asia, tremendous inroads being made. So Thailand launched an ambitious plan to build the world's largest floating solar farm. Vietnam's solar sector has accelerated massively, hitting its target 6 years ahead of schedule and becoming the largest solar market in Southeast Asia. Indonesia, where I'm sitting at the moment, with its significant domestic coal reserves, said in January that it was looking to transition from coal to renewables. And similarly, Malaysia is growing its renewable energy capacity significantly, aiming to reach 30% by 2030. I think obviously COVID has upended many of our plans in 2020, and I think now we're faced with this challenge of all of us needing to ensure that our economies rebound, that we can stop people in our countries slipping back into poverty or undoing some of the development gains that we've made. And I think there's a risk that people see clean energy or wider action on climate change as optional or as a kind of something that's too expensive or too difficult. So I'd like to say a little bit about the UK's experience actually in our energy transition, which I think helps to show that that is not the case. So the UK was the first major economy to set a net zero target, and we've since then also committed to ending coal use completely by 2024. So we've seen a huge reduction in the use of coal in the UK for electricity production. In 2012, 40% of our electricity was generated from coal. In 2019, it was 2.2%. And between April and June of this year, we went 67 days without any coal power in our energy mix at all. And through that period, we've also shown that emissions reduction and economic growth can happen at the same time. So between 1990 and 2019, UK emissions fell by about 40%, mainly driven by the move away from coal, and our economy grew by 70%. So that shows, I think, that from our own experience, our lived experience, that this energy transition is attainable and that it delivers real benefits. Move on now to say a little bit about our engagement with ASEAN on this. So we're really proud to be working closely with ASEAN on these issues. We recently agreed a collaboration framework on climate change ahead of COP26. We've got a COP26 energy transition campaign, and we've got a range of programs and teams in the region, including Dr. Isabel, who will be speaking later. Underpinning this, we have a £15 million UK ASEAN low carbon energy program, which is working across all 10 ASEAN member states. In Indonesia, we've got a £13 million program called Mentari, which is looking to assist and support Indonesia's transition to renewable energy. And many countries in this region are using the UK developed 2050 calculator to conduct energy modelling and visualise low carbon pathways that would work in their country. Finally, we are using something called the Partnering for Accelerated Climate Transitions program in this region, which has done a range of things in Southeast Asia, including supporting the Malaysian government to enhance its climate governance architecture. That program's work is expanding now, following, in light of the fact that we all need to respond to COVID. We've launched something called the Green Recovery Challenge Fund, which will disburse £12 million over 2 years on projects that help countries accelerate their low carbon transition and ensure a sustainable recovery from COVID. So finally, I want to look forward to COP26. The UK is co-hosting that, as I mentioned. We'll be celebrating on Sunday the fact that we're 1 year out from COP26. And of course, it's a huge priority for us to work with partners around the world, and particularly in this region, ahead of that moment. So as we look forward to COP26, the UK's energy transition team is bringing countries, development banks, investors, industry and civil society together to ensure that every country can access the investment and assistance to more rapidly scale up renewable energy. We recognise that many countries in our region here in Southeast Asia face barriers in expanding their renewable energy capacity, such as high capital costs, difficulty accessing finance, and a lack of support with the technical aspects of the transition to clean energy. And that's why we've launched our COP26 Energy Transition Council. It's chaired by the UK COP26 President, Alok Sharma, alongside the UK Secretary General's Special Representative for Sustainable Energy. And the idea behind that council is that it will harness multilateral convening power and sectoral expertise to help find solutions and drive forward the transition to clean energy. So we're really looking forward to our continued collaboration with ASEAN member states and institutions like the ASEAN Centre for Energy. And so, it will remain a huge priority for us, particularly over the next year, up to COP26, and then in the years beyond that. So I'm very excited to be here today, really looking forward to the remainder of the discussion and looking forward to the partnership here in this region over the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Lambe, for your comments and also the highlight about the cooperations between UK and ASEAN. Now, I would like to invite Ambassador of Norway for ASEAN, Ambassador Morten Hogland, to share also his comment regarding the topic. Please, Ambassador, the time is yours.
Thank you. Dear participants, first I would like to thank the organizers of this roundtable. Norway has made it a key priority in our ASEAN partnership to work with the countries in the region on energy-related issues, especially looking at how we can deliver more clean energy. ASEAN Centre for Energy is our main partner in this work, but Norway also works quite closely with many of the ASEAN states on bilateral energy-related issues. So we are not a newcomer to the region in terms of energy issues. I would say we are at a possible turning point. Decisions we take in the coming months will seriously impact our ability to design sustainable energy systems. The COVID-19 pandemic can either widen the existing sustainable energy access gaps or accelerate the path towards achieving the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, depending on the priorities of national recovery efforts. The choice is ours. And as countries develop policies and take actions to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, they need to safeguard past gains in terms of more sustainable energy systems. Greater improvements to address the needs of a post-pandemic world that leaves no one behind should also be aimed for. Getting all stakeholders to step up, focus, and make the right decisions will determine whether we will achieve SDG 7 and SDG 13 or not. Now, let me provide you with some ideas for how ASEAN countries can design affordable and clean energy for a resilient energy system. First, we must maintain global momentum to accelerate the shift towards decarbonized, climate-resilient energy systems and universal energy access. Failure to transition quickly to more accessible, affordable, and sustainable energy systems will reinforce weaknesses in our energy systems demonstrated by COVID-19. It will also jeopardize the fight against climate change and threaten human well-being, ecosystems, and economies, possibly for centuries. Therefore, we need political leadership, determination, and unity against climate change, even as we mobilize against the pandemic. Second, although the world continues to make progress on SDG 7, overall efforts are falling well short of the scale required. Efforts must be intensified. Urgent action will be required to expand electricity access for health facilities as part of our efforts to combat the pandemic. Major initiatives, political prioritization, and substantial investments will be needed to achieve universal access to clean cooking solutions. Energy efficiency must be made a policy and investment priority. We need to integrate gender equality and women's empowerment into all energy actions to advance the SDGs. Third, far more needs to be done to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 in pursuit of the 1.5 centigrade goal. Current ambition levels related to renewable energy and energy efficiency do not match the efforts needed for meeting the mitigation targets set out in the Paris Agreement. Countries need to set more ambitious targets and policies in their revised NDCs. There is an urgent need to support the phase-out of coal through clean energy plans and remove inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, supported by just transition strategies. Building interconnected energy systems will also accelerate energy sector decarbonization. Fourth, post-COVID-19 recovery strategies present opportunities for economies to become greener and more resilient while working towards SDG 7 target. Priorities of national economic stimulus packages and global responses to support those most in need will determine the path toward achieving SDG 7. Fifth, we call on all, including the ASEAN countries and other stakeholders, to drive the global energy transformation forward by forming transformational partnerships. In dealing with the pandemic, strong political commitments by governments and multilateral cooperation will be more crucial than ever to maintain the momentum. Multi-stakeholder initiatives play a central role in accelerating action. UN entities, international organizations, and multilateral development banks, as well as businesses, civil society, and other stakeholders must step up and strengthen their efforts to support the implementation of the SDGs. And we need to include youth in all our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hoagland, for your comments. There are a lot of good points that we will discuss later on with our speakers in the panel. Now we will have the second session, which is scene-setting presentations on strategies and policy actions to provide clean and affordable energy system for all communities. For these sessions, we will have 3 speakers, including me from ASEAN Centre for Energy. And then the second, we will have Ms. Ngo Thuy Quinn, Deputy Director General of the Oil and Gas and Coal Department from Ministry of Industry and Trade, MOIT, Vietnam, to share her insights on from the Vietnam. And Dr. Isabel de la Vos, Head of COP26 in Southeast Asia, and she will also be delivering insights from the UK. So before we proceed with those 2 speakers, on behalf of ASEAN Centre for Energy, I would like to share you some slides to put on the context of what is affordable and clean energy means for ASEAN communities actually. Next. So if we start talking about the affordability, we may see that there will be a little bit different definitions and perspective from the ASEAN member states due to a wide range of diversity of available resource that we have in ASEAN. For example, in Indonesia and Vietnam, we are rich in coal, so coal might be the cheapest to provide affordable energy, while maybe it differ from Malaysia and Thailand, which has abundant gas resource, and also in Mekong region where the hydropower potentials are abundant. So there might be a different affordability components that each of the ASEAN member states has in their energy policies when it comes to providing affordable energy to the people. Next. Yeah, but in terms of clean energy, we seem to have a similar understanding of what is clean in the region, and it's associated with renewable energy mostly, despite the fact that some countries are still putting gas or clean coal in their definitions of clean energy. You can see that all 10 ASEAN member states has a renewable energy target to achieve. And as a region, we have also aspirational target to achieve 23% RE share in total primary energy supply by 2025. Next. So in ASEAN, to pursue affordable and clean energy, we also join the global efforts, showing from the all 10 ASEAN countries has ratified their contribution in NDC under the Paris Agreement. We also try to contribute to implement SDG number 7 and 13, and we are showing a lot of progress towards that. Next. So to provide affordable and clean energy in the region, ASEAN countries has established several and a lot actually policies to push this forward. In the side of affordability, a lot of policy support is launched, and it's mainly associated with subsidy when it comes to affordability. Basically, it's still we still see many subsidy regarding the fossil fuel for the consumer, as well as fossil fuel for the electricity in the power sector. However, we see a gradual subsidy reform from the fossil fuel to more renewable energy support. So here in the table, we summarize that there are a lot of incentive or a scheme that we have established to support the growth of RE in the region. Next. Yeah, so it's clear that we are pursuing both affordable and clean energy, but sometimes it's not obvious to us, and we are often sitting on the fence of choosing affordable or clean energy, while actually we can do both affordable and clean. And why that ASEAN needs to pursue this further and accelerate the effort, especially with renewable energy. First is because the declining RE price trend has provided a lot of big opportunities for ASEAN to use more renewables. So it's getting cheaper globally, and we saw a similar trend in ASEAN as well. The second thing that also emphasized by a lot of speakers previously, that ASEAN cannot afford to go with the conventional fuels because energy is one of the biggest emitter on the region after the aside with the land use change. And we cannot really afford to have a climate disaster, since when it impacts our vulnerable communities, the recovery pathway will be harder and will be more costly. So RE is really need to be the key to to be used in this region. And the third is the pandemic that we are facing right now create a good momentum for us to rethink our energy strategies, especially proven the impossible is possible now, that if we are pursuing RE, and then for the green long-term recovery path, it will be much more benefit that we can get, and we can avoid a lot of stranded assets in the future. Next. So yeah, I want to conclude that we in ASEAN, we clearly pursuing affordable and clean energy and put that as a focus in the region, despite there is a slightly different variation of how we divide it. And this variation is rooted basically because of the economic capabilities, geographical conditions, and also the resource availability that we have in the region. And we need to also realize that we are no longer need to choose between affordable or clean, because affordable and clean energy is now become feasible, and it's really urgent to pursue it now. So there are several recommendations that we want to put out for ASEAN. First is we would like the region to benchmark with other region or each other, that we will also hear from a lot of speakers later about the experience of UK and other regions to phase out conventional fuels and move to renewables. The second thing is to incorporate inclusivity in its policy, especially when it comes to designing a subsidy, because we need really need to think who are the well benefited from these policies, and make sure who are the subsidy is well targeted, so that it's efficient. And then the third is we need ASEAN to think outside in and act inward out, meaning that we need to realize the energy transitions is happen globally, so we do not want to miss the bandwagon, and we really need to act now, as the actions, the little actions that we have will give a big impact. For example, if we are achieving all our NDC target, it's not only benefited for us, but also benefited for whole the world. And also the last is having long-term vision in short-term actions, meaning we need to act now, and then maybe it's still deemed expensive to invest in renewables, but the investment that we put now will be actually have a far more impact later on. Next. Yeah, so those are the summary of the newest publications about affordable and clean energy that we have just launched early this week. For the full access of publication, you can go through our site. Next. I think that concludes all my presentations. I hope that now we can see the scene of why we are talking about affordable and clean energy in the region. So I will hand the room to Miss Queen that will be delivering her insights from Vietnam. Miss Queen, the time is yours.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to present to you about the update on the Vietnam's national energy development. So next slide, please. The content of the presentation including the Vietnam power system, policies to develop the renewable energy in Vietnam, policies to develop clean energy, oriented to PDP numbers and National Energy Master Plan. Next. For the Vietnam power system. Next. So the power sources in 2019 exemption of our imports. We have the hydro, coal-fired, oil, gas, renewable, with the total is 55,000 megawatts. So many in hydro, we have bigger volume of hydro, and also coal-fired because of the national resources. And oil and gas after, and renewable is a new field, but we try our best to develop in the near future. Next slide. Next, please. Next slide. For the power generation in 2019, previous slide, please. Okay. The total is 260,000, not 260.7, but 260,000 more than 700 megawatts. So many coal-fired and hydro and renewable is increased recently. So next slide, please. For fuel mix of power generation, as we know, for sharing of hydro and coal-fired is being very big. So we for many kinds of other fuel, we try our best to develop in the future. Next slide, please. For the new source come into operation, as I mentioned, in 2019, we have 6 hydropower plants, which total capacity is around 100.8 megawatt. 2 coal-fired power plants, which total capacity is around 1.3 megawatt, 100 megawatts, and 2 wind power plants with capacity 46 megawatt and 92 solar power plants with total capacity 4.6 thousand megawatts. So you can see the solar power plant is developed very quickly in Vietnam now. So next slide, please. So for the policies on renewable development in Vietnam, I will go more detail. For grid connect solar power, as I mentioned, 92 projects were operated with total capacity of 4.6 thousand megawatt, and 135 solar power projects have been supplemented with a plan with total capacity of 30,000 megawatt, and proposed planning total solar capacity in 2025 is 14,000 megawatt. In 2030 is 20,000 megawatt. And rooftop solar power nationwide, there are 24,000 rooftop system with total capacity of 470 megawatts. Next, please. So for the wind power, we have 9 wind power projects have operated with total capacity of 350 megawatts, and blend total wind capacity is 4.8 thousand megawatt. So very big in the future. The projected wind power plant to 2025 is 30 thousand megawatts base case, and even go to 11,000 more than high option in our PDB number 8. Next, please. So for other renewable energy, we plan for biomass in operation is about 350 megawatts in the future. Next, please.
Sorry, Ms. Quinn, I would like to remind you that you will have only 4 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you. For the policies to develop renewable energy in Vietnam, we have some very positive policies like electricity of Vietnam must purchase all generating capacity of renewable energy plants, and the term of power PPA is 20 years. Electricity price is adjusted according to US and Vietnamese exchange rates, and incentives on investment capital and taxes we have applied for the import tax, corporate tax, income tax. The project will be exemption or reduction. And land incentive, we use land use levy exemption reduction. Next, please. And we have a FIT mechanism to develop the renewable energy like wind. We have applied before September 31st October of next year. And biomass, we have also have some decision from the Prime Minister. And waste, we also have some decision from Prime Minister. And solar, we have some at the moment we for COD projects before 31st December of this year, but maybe we will consider to extend more in the future. Next, please. So challenges to integrate renewable on a large scale. We have some the transmission grid blending in PDB number 7 has not adjusted to the integration of renewable in large scale, and the construction of the transmission grid is much longer than the construction of wind and solar power projects. And renewable energy development policy, FIT pricing mechanism, as I mentioned, has not been applied for a long time. There has not been a comprehensive study on the development of offshore wind power project in Vietnam now. So we need more study on this issue. Next, please. Next. Policies to develop the renewable energy in coming year. We will focus on building mechanism for the solution to develop the wind and solar power transition period from FID pricing mechanism to bidding mechanism, and develop technical standards for wind and solar power project, and study the mechanism of socialization for investment of transmission grid.
You have 1 minute left
energy
to wrap up the PPT.
Yes, thank you. So next, please. Next, please. For policies to develop the clean energy as a clean energy, we have the policy on energy development. Next, please. Next. So we have some policy to establish and issue the legal framework, and we study and apply the mechanism policy for importing and distributing LNG. And we promote investment in LNG terminal in the future. Next, please. Next. For biofuel policy and roadmap, we also apply the policy to using E5 now. Next, please. And we have roadmap, and we issue technical standard and regulation. Next. As well as the tax policy we apply. Next. So for this policy, we will promote the consumption and stabilize E5 price in Vietnam. Next, please. Okay, for oriented of PDP number 8 and National Energy Master Plan, next we have some input parameter for the new master plan. We mention quick focus on the clean, renewable energy, clean energy, and for the price, the reasonable price and target to high in energy efficiency. Next slide, please. So now we revise the two master plan on energy and on power development. It's focused on the clean in the future, clean fuel. So that's all for our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Sorry that I need to rush you out.
Yeah.
More when we are discussing with you later. And now I would like to invite Dr. Isabel de la Finfos to deliver her presentations. Appreciated that if you could make it short and concise. Please, the time is yours.
Thank you, Shani, for inviting me to join this panel. It's an honor to contribute to the conversation. So my colleague John has already given you the high-level messages on the UK engagement in ASEAN and our COP26 objectives. So I will now present some of the underpinning evidence on the UK's experience in delivering an affordable and clean energy transition. So next, please. So first, let's start by looking at some of the striking figures that show that the clean energy transition is now a global trend. And, John has mentioned it, you have mentioned it, and others have mentioned it. So it is now mainstream, and where it is not yet mainstream, it clearly should be, not only because of the environmental benefits, but mostly because of the economic benefits it brings to the economy and jobs. So John already talked you through some of these figures. So for the sake of that, I'm not going to go through them again, but really to show that these cannot be ignored anymore. Next, please. So what the UK experience has shown is that it is possible to grow your economy while at the same time reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. So Ashani, as you said before, we no longer need to choose between affordable for your economy and clean energy. You can do both, and that's what the UK experience has shown. So the argument that we can still hear about, investing in green technologies costs too much, it really doesn't stand anymore, and the UK is a proof to that. What the figure here shows is that the UK economy has grown by 75% since 1990, and at the same time, it has cut its emission by 43%. The same trend is observed in other G7 countries, as the figure shows, but the UK performance is particularly striking in how it has been able to decouple growth and emissions. Next, please. So how did the UK manage to do that? One of the key drivers of the UK greenhouse gas emission is its energy sector. And that is where a transformational change has occurred in the UK through a substantial electricity market reform. The aim of the reform was to transform the UK electricity market to offer secure, affordable, and low carbon electricity. The electricity market reform was launched in 2013, and it introduced two radical changes to the electricity market in the UK. A capacity market that helps ensure security of electricity supply at the least cost to consumers using an auction and bidding system, like Vietnam is exploring now. And the new renewable electricity financial support scheme, that's called a contract for difference, that provides a long-term revenue contract that de-risks the investments and lower the cost for consumers. The cornerstone of this reform to guarantee lower cost for consumer is that both the capacity market and the contract for difference are delivered through auctions. So only the most competitive clean energy projects can enter the electricity systems now. One of the outcomes of the electricity market reform is that the UK has been able to remove coal from its electricity system almost entirely in about 5 years only. That's what this figure shows. Coal made up over 60% of the electricity system in 1990, then decreased to about 40% in 2012 to finally drop today. Over the last 10 years, coal has been replaced mostly by wind, biofuels, and solar. Between April and June earlier this year, the UK went 67 days without using coal at all. So it is really able to drop coal out of the system. This transformational change was possible because it was underpinned by a set of visionary legislations and political commitments. Next, please. So these visionary legislations are the Climate Change Act that was adopted as early as 2008. The UK also has a carbon price. The UK set early signal to the market that coal would be phased out by 2024. The UK has the Renewable Support Scheme that I mentioned. The UK has also strong air quality regulations. And the UK has set a green growth industrial strategy to decarbonize its industrial sector as well. And more recently, the UK has been the first major economy to adopt a legally binding net zero target by 2050. So these robust long-term and legal policy frameworks really underpins the transition. Next, please. But we recognize that transitioning to green energy is not easy, and there has been a number of barriers the UK has had to overcome when we decided to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy in our energy system. Policy and regulatory barriers, technology and system barriers, and also difficulty in accessing finance at low cost for renewable energy projects. So I'm not going to go through all of this today, but I want to flag that as part of the UK presidency, we are launching a new international coordination initiative to help countries committed to energy transition overcome these barriers. Next, please. The COP26 Energy Transition Council that John mentioned earlier is bringing together political, financial, and technical leaders in the power sector to scale up more rapidly renewable energy and phase out the use of coal in the power sector. The council is chaired by the UK COP26 President Alok Sharma, alongside Damiola Ogunbigi, who spoke earlier.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Isabel, for the point out how the UK do it in terms of providing affordable and clean energy. So we are ready for the panel discussions. I would like to invite my colleagues Benny to lead the sessions. Please, Benny.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Good morning to good afternoon, everyone from Jakarta. It's my great honor to moderate the discussion in our roundtables today. We have here three presentations, one of our policy brief that coming from ACE, and then a perspective from Vietnam as in representing the ASEAN, and then we also heard the perspective from UK as the developed countries. We have also solid lineup of the panelists. Three great people is joining with us, the panelists. But our two speakers will also join for us for the discussion. But before I go with the discussion, I would like to share with you earlier when we started the roundtable that my colleague is sharing with you. We have pools that you can access in the application SIEW, and we have three questions. And then what I can share at this point, the poll is still ongoing, but on the first question, that more than 70% of the colleagues participants is see that the effort in ASEAN to achieve the SDG number is on progress, but still many things that need to be improved. And the second seems like more than 70% also people agree that providing affordable and clean energy is now possible. It's no longer about or, but it's and that we can use. And then improving clean energy using renewable energy is also around 78% people agree that renewable energy is getting cheaper even for rural and remote areas utilization. So it's a very interesting finding, and we will discuss more with our panelists. And I would like to start with Ms. Elizabeth Tisser, the project manager of the Clean, Affordable and Secure Energy for the Southeast Asia, or CASE project from the GIZ. Ms. Elizabeth, you have been working on the sustainable energy development since a decade ago with a focus area on renewable energy. Currently, you are in charge for the project managers of CASE in Indonesia. So would you mind to share with us your view about Vietnam presentation before, and then how you see the progress of the clean energy to need to be pushed in this region?
Yeah, thank you very much, Benny, for the kind introduction. My name is Lisa Tinchat. I work for the CASE project, which is a regional program, and I'm the project manager for Indonesia. As the name suggests, it stands for Southeast Asia, and the CASE program seeks to look into the decarbonization of the power sector for Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. So it is a multi-stakeholder approach. We're talking with public, private sector, and also CSOs, and it's part of the ETP, the Energy Transition Partnership. I'm very happy. Thank you for the invitation. Dr. Nuki from ACE. I'm very glad to be here and listening to these interesting presentations from the ambassadors and UN Special Representative and Ms. Quinn and Dr. Lovenfoss. Especially the presentation on Vietnam, I think it's very impressive. I would say Vietnam is, from the ASEAN countries, one of the leading countries moving renewables forward. We saw some, I think, very impressive numbers within 1 year. Almost 5,000 megawatt built, the plans to build more in the future, also strengthening it within the power development plan. I think focusing more on renewables, I think it's very impressive, and it shows Vietnam's commitment, taking climate change seriously and taking steps forward. So I'm very impressed, and I think there's a lot to learn through regional cooperation and exchange with Vietnam. Looking at your question, Beni, with how it can be done, clean and affordable, can it be done? Panelists already agreed, yes, it is feasible. I would go further, I would say it's a condition. It has to be clean and it has to be affordable. If we look at what is sustainable, how do we define it? Sustainable energy has 3 pillars. So clean is the environmental pillar. So we look into less pollution and mitigating greenhouse gas emission reductions. The second pillar is affordable. This looks into, do we have access to electricity? Can we afford the access? Is it reliable, the access? So this is the social pillar. And then we have the economic pillar, which was also mentioned already, through energy security, for example. I think for the ASEAN region, it is particularly relevant that clean and affordable has to be achieved to one of the main challenges that ASEAN countries face. One is closing the access gap. We already heard this, that there's still not all the countries have 100% access. I think Southeast Asia alone, there's almost 50 million people without access. Especially this last mile of electrification is expensive. So you look at options of either grid extension, grid connection, or you look into decentralized options. And I think there it's interesting to look, okay, there's really renewable energies come in, mini grids, solar, micro power, micro hydro together with battery hybrid systems that are affordable and clean, so solutions are available. The second challenge I can see where it is important to consider both affordable and clean is meeting the rising energy demand. I think the latest figures from the ASEAN is that it's expected until 2040 that energy demand will rise by 2.5 times. If you look at Southeast Asia alone, electricity demand growth was 5, 6, 7% in the past, and it will continue again to increase after the COVID pandemic. So I think countries have a choice now. It's like a crossroad, as it was mentioned before. Either go further towards extending further the fossil fuel system, that's the backbone of many systems now, or to focus on renewable energies. And here, I think clearly renewables win again. They are clean and they are more affordable. It was already mentioned a lot. Technology costs are falling. Fossil fuels are risky. They're getting pricey. There's a risk of failed investment, oversupply. If you talk about carbon pricing, carbon trading systems coming in, this will increase the cost further. And then in the future, you have concerns, even more concerns about affordability and electricity pricing. So I think renewables really wins here. And I think it's my point would be you have to look into both clean and affordable. And I think ASEAN countries now are, have crucial and critical choices to make. But I'm very optimistic that they can do it.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a very interesting finding. And then I will connect your point talking about the option renewable energy. And then we also talking about the last mile people, about the energy access. And for that, I will go with Mr. Todd Moss, the Executive Director, the Energy for Growth Hubs. You are a non-resident fellow at the Center for Energy Studies at Rice University, Beckers, also at the Payne Institute and Clarity School of Mine. And then you have a lot of experience in Africa. And to my understanding, I mean, Mr. Todd Moss, that your Energy for Growth Hub, that you are looking, the energy is not only providing the basic needs, but is for growing, for the economic development. On this point, that how do you see this issue on the affordable and clean? Should we rely, I mean, it's going to be a renewable energy or open all of that option? Can we hear from you, Mr. Todd?
Sure. Thank you, Benny, and great to be with you and the other panelists. One of the benefits, so I was a diplomat and I'm no longer a diplomat. Now I'm an academic. So one of the benefits of that is I can say what I really think, and I'm not, I don't have to take my government's position. So I'm going to probably be somewhat different than some of the other panelists who are representing large institutions or governments. So the starting point, I think, for all this is exactly what Elizabeth said, which is that all countries need low-cost, reliable power to grow their economies and to create jobs. And really, I want to emphasize reliability, and that the ASEAN region is growing very, very fast. So we just completed a global map of electricity with another think tank called Third Way, and we're projecting that the ASEAN region will need more than 3,000 additional terawatt hours by 2050. So that's more than 3 times current generation by 2050. So very, very rapid increases. It's obvious, so that's point one. Second point is that it's obvious that renewable energy, particularly solar and wind, are getting much cheaper. And in some ways, that's a great option. We heard a little bit about the off-grid solar solutions. Those are very useful for some very basic energy services, maybe for a very small business, certainly for remote locations where last mile grid connection will be very expensive. But of course, that's not useful at all for any large scale applications or for anything that's very energy intensive. Basically anything where you're doing heating or cooling, those solutions are not very good. And also anything that needs to be globally competitive, where the price really matters, and that would matter for anything that you're going to export to global markets. That's where these kinds of systems are basically useless. And I think that the comparison I make is with a bicycle. So we all need transportation. My bicycle is very cheap, very easy. It's the best way for me to get around the town where I live, but it's absolutely useless for hauling cargo across the country. For that, you need big trucks. So it would be dumb to have a debate about whether my bicycle is the best, cheapest form of transportation when we want lots of different things. And the same goes for energy. So when we look at the on-grid wind and solar, it's a great idea where countries can to use this very cheap, especially ultra cheap solar to drive down the prices. But because wind and solar are variable, this really only works when they're integrated into a wider system that has backup options that can complement this variability and balance the system. So lots of wind and solar have to be integrated with other more reliable sources like gas or hydro or coal or nuclear or geothermal. Or I know people are talking about storage, but you actually, and storage is getting cheaper, but you need a lot of storage. People often talk about maybe 4 hours of storage, but you need way more than 4 hours of storage if you're going to really run that way. So that very high penetration of variable renewable energy requires a ton of flexibility. And the last point I just want to make is that flexibility matters in different ways. So you need to be technically flexible so it can ramp up and down, and you need the grid to be able to adjust, but it also needs to be financially flexible, which is how do you cover the cost of that backup sources when they're not running? And that's why your backup sources need to have low capital cost and relatively high operational costs. That's why gas, and especially gas peaker plants, are so good when you want to have a lot of solar and wind. Unfortunately, it means nuclear, large hydro, geothermal, those all have high capital costs and low operational costs, so they're actually not very good for follow-on. Maybe some of the advanced nuclear models will be good for that. And so you'll note we've heard a lot about the UK today. The gas, as they were reducing coal, you did see their gas share rising quite a bit. And that's because gas pairs very well with offshore wind. So the basic point is that wind and solar are cheap. They're an important part of the mix, but they cannot do it alone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. The very interesting point that you raised. And then I connected with our next panelist, Mr. Lim Yew Keong. Mr. Todd say that he was a diplomat, but no longer a diplomat, so he can say whatever he's think right to do that. And let's hear as well from the perspective of business. I mean, it's gonna be who would run the money, who calls it. You are the senior vice president of the strategic partnership and origination at the SIEW. It's a well-known company, it's big companies in Southeast Asia region and globally. And you are responsible for growth and profitability of the diverse business portfolio. So a wide range of the portfolio under your responsibility, like retail or downstream, every single thing integrated on that one. So from this point of view, tell us about what you do in SIEW and how you see the business sectors can really playing a role in this affordable and clean energy for the peoples. Mr. YK, please.
All right. Thank you, Benny, and good morning, everybody. I'm YK from SIEW. Thought, is now giving academics. I will give you the commercial view from the business sense. We have heard this morning from various dignitaries about how they have reinforced their commitment to a low carbon future. I think that is very heartening. And we also hear in day one of SIEW that our own Singapore Minister Chan, has wanted Singapore to be the bright green spark of the world. So private companies like SIEW, we will be the ones providing the innovative, sustainable solutions to meet these aspirations. I think in response to your questions, I think private sector has got a leading role to play in this energy transition from fossil fuel systems to renewables and batteries. So let me give you an example using SIEW as one of such a private company. 8 years ago, we entered into the renewables in China, make our first foray into the renewable space. And today we have about 725 megawatts of wind assets. 5 years ago, in 2005, we then entered into India, and today we have about 1.7 gigawatts of wind and solar assets. Today in Singapore, we are the largest homegrown renewables player, collectively about 2.6 gigawatts of renewable capacity. And in our home ground, where we are today, Singapore, we have about 200 and close to 240 megawatts. And we are building Singapore's largest solar floating project, about 60 megawatts. So in response to what Tak say, it's true that renewables alone can't do the job. So you bring in an example that's further away for Sembcorp. In the UK, we have one of UK's largest battery storage platform, about 120 megawatts. And on top of the battery storages, we also have quick start gas engines that is scattered across about 40 locations in England and in Wales to address the intermittencies that there is associated with renewables. And this is very important because collectively renewables plus the batteries, Sembcorp is then able to provide the reliable power that Tak was talking about. Reliable and affordable and clean power to consumers, to customers, and only then you can give them the confidence to switch from conventional sources to clean sources. Private sectors are also actively looking at how they can tap onto alternative fundings. For those of us who are in the renewables business, we know that it is a very capital-intensive business. We need lots of money to really deploy renewables at scale. Private sectors are deploying very innovative financing schemes, tapping onto unconventional sources of funds to deploy these renewables at scales. And it has a domino effect because when the renewables are rolled out at scale, then it accelerates the falling cost of renewables. So collectively, all these private sector development will improve the acceleration of the penetration of renewables and accessibility in this region.
Thank you. I think it's also very interesting that when you say you're sharing various portfolio of the Sembcorp and how to balance. This is something the word that I can also collect from the panelists that we have the balance in terms of the technical needs, renewable energy and then the thermal, or the balance also in the financing issue that we have. In keeping the effort to provide affordable and clean energy for the peoples. And for that, allow me to back to Ms. Queen. You are sharing the perspective of Vietnam before. Vietnam, for in this year, I mean, the last year, Vietnam is always on the top of the story. Your solar boom is like amazing story for all of the countries in ASEAN, and I think also at global levels that people looking on the Vietnam. But in other side, I mean, in your presentation, they're saying that the role of fossil fuel is still also quite significant in the current power development plan or even in the futures. So in this context, would you mind to share with us that how the government, how the ministry is trying to find a balance between this various option on the energy that we have, domestic fossil fuels, but also at the same time pursuing renewable energy in ensuring the affordability of the energy price. How you see the government doing in the balancing this, and then what the thing that could also another countries in region can also learn from the Vietnam experience. Ms. Queen. I'm sorry, we need you to unmute, Ms. Queen. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you, Benny. So As I mentioned in our presentation, that Vietnam we focus on the renewable energy recently because the potential in Vietnam for the solar and wind we have, and because of the commitment from the government as well as in the international forum that we have to reduce the carbon. So we try our best to for the more cleaner the fuels, and so for the develop the solar project, solar power project and wind project. As you know that we have to apply so many policies to encourage the enterprise and to invest in this field, and we socialize socialization I mean for private sector, because for the state-owned company, we get some difficulty in the finance arrangement. So we encourage the private sector to for more invest to the solar and wind power. That's why we have to apply many policies, incentives for the FIT price, for example, and apply a tax incentive in corporate income tax, for example, and no import tax for the equipment which has not produced domestically. So we apply in our by the import and export law, and so many legal framework that we have to apply. So for the coal-fired power project, we still have to develop, but we will go for the most efficiency green coal technology in the future, and roadmap for retiring inefficiency coal power plant. So we also setting the possible target for GHG emission reduction in the future. So I think in our total master plan on power development as well as in energy master plan, we have to consider to maximize all the green fuel project in the future, but we have to balance and to calculate to for the affordable price, because for the economy of Vietnam is going very fast, and so we need more energy and power in the future. So in the case of effects from the COVID-19 pandemic, so we are facing with the some difficulties in the finance arrangement, or the some delay of the other project that we have to consider to maximize all the investment, not only from Vietnam, but from the foreign, from international organization. We will calling for and foremost for the investment from the foreign partner. So we hope we continue and have further cooperation with other ASEAN country as well as from the other country, even Norway. Norway, we have some study on the LNG to power project. So we hope that we will start importing LNG project by 2022 or even next year when the domestic gas is the deadline. So we have to import more. So we have some suggestion from SIEW as well in Vietnam. So we hope that we have stronger and further cooperation with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. It's good to hear that the cooperation is already ongoing among among us that, as Dr. Nuki mentioned, that is not about the just discussion, but how the collaboration that we can pursue together. And talking about that point, you mentioned about the international effort that needs to be support the countries in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia. To that point, may I call to Dr. Isabel to share that's going to be, you are leading the COP26 for the Southeast Asia region, and then the UK is on the front line on this energy transition as well. How do you see the ongoing process here in ASEAN, and then what the plan that you can think that mobilizes global effort to also support the ASEAN in energy transition, in providing the affordable and clean energy for the peoples? Dr. Isabel, please.
Thank you, Benny. Yes, so basically, ASEAN has really a massive role to play globally to meet the Paris Agreement targets. You know, one say in international circles that the climate crisis will be won or will be lost in Asia, and particularly in Southeast Asia, because some of the Southeast Asian countries are the highest emitters, the highest growing emitters in the future and in the projections. So really actions in Southeast Asia are important. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm very excited to be working in Southeast Asia on COP26. But what we're trying to forget sometimes, and Damilola kind of flagged it earlier, is that also ASEAN is one of the regions of the world that would have the most to lose from climate change. You know, if climate change gets out of control, because it's so vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So I think ASEAN is at this kind of border between, they're emitting more and more, but at the same time, they will be, very vulnerable and will be suffering from the impacts of climate change. So I think there are two positive drivers for driving actions on climate change mitigation and adaptation in Southeast Asia. So it will be in ASEAN's own interest, really, in self-preservation, to be very proactive and ambitious in its own climate mitigation and adaptation efforts. On energy transition, as I mentioned, we are creating this Energy Transition Council, and there will be a dialogue with the ASEAN countries who really want to benefit from more international support and mobilize more international finance. And Vietnam is invited to that council. And we also have kind of a stream of different campaigns on mitigation, but also on adaptation, working with solutions on cornerstone for Southeast Asia and the ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Isabel. And then you highlighting the points that about the ASEAN vulnerable, and then to lose, and then I think at this point related to the question, who bear the cost of this energy transition? Who are responsible? I mean, to bear the cost in providing the affordable and clean energy. Let me back to Mr. Todd Moss. To this question, I mean, it's going to be, you see that the ASEAN doing this effort. There we have a developed country to also support, and you explain, and also in Africa. And to this question, that's who should bear the cost for affordable and clean energy? I mean, is it us, the consumer, or can we pass it to Mr. YK, the business sector, to deal with this one? Who do you think, Mr. Todd?
So that's a great question. Look, I think all countries have to play their part in transitioning to a zero carbon economy, but they don't have to do that equally. And the starting point, I think, let's be very clear about who's responsible for the emissions that's causing climate change. So just before this, I looked it up. ASEAN, as the 10 members of ASEAN account for about 9% of the global population, but only about 2% of cumulative CO2 emissions. Now, the US, where I am, and the EU combined are only 10% of the global population, but account for about half of the cumulative emissions. So it's clear who's been causing the problem and who hasn't been causing the problem. And energy, of course, is a big reason. Now, yes, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, they're all increasing their emissions right now. But if you look at the differentials, it's still massive, right? So Indonesia and the Philippines, the average person uses less than 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. If we're just talking about the power sector. In my country, it's more than 13,000. So again, we're just massive differentials here. And so while yes, all countries have to play their part, they don't need to do it in the same way. They don't need to do it on the same timeline, and they don't need to pay the same amount. So Benny, I guess your question is who should pay? I guess it's pay for what exactly, but clearly developing nations and fast growing nations, that what they need is least cost power first and foremost. And because they're the ones least responsible and the ones who need the most energy, they're the ones that should be given the most flexibility. The burden needs to fall on the wealthy, high emitting countries. And you just cannot, it's actually immoral to ask poor people to pay higher prices than rich people for power. And that applies to nations as well. And one, I think, very crucial point is that we keep hearing that the reason for wind and solar is cost. And it is not, you cannot just compare levelized cost of electricity, LCOE, across technologies with very different capacity factors. It's wrong to do that. You have to compare apples to apples. So you need to compare the actual cost of the system to deliver the same energy services that you need. So when you're talking about, if you're talking about reliable power at scale for industry, for commerce, for Asia's mega cities, you can't just say, well, solar is only 5 cents a kilowatt hour and, gas or coal is more than that. It's the cost that matters is the entire system. So where I think if Europe and the US and other high emitting wealthy nations want Asian and African and Latin American countries to be higher share of renewables, they're obviously not going to subsidize low cost generation, but they have to help subsidize and build those reliable systems that can absorb those high shares of renewables. And unfortunately, these compensation mechanisms through things like the World Bank, the regional development banks, are totally inadequate, right? And I'm not a basher of the World Bank. I've worked at the World Bank, but those mechanisms are just a tiny fraction of what's needed. And then I guess one other very important point, Isabel mentioned that Asia and ASEAN is at the greatest risk from climate change. So, but we should be separating out when we think about mitigation of emissions and the adaptation that all countries are going to need. No matter how much mitigation we achieve, if we all went to 100% renewables tomorrow, there's so much climate change baked into the atmosphere, baked into the system, that we're still going to be dealing with the effects of climate change. And that is going to require all kinds, it logically makes no sense for a country like Indonesia to say, which is still a small contributor to emissions mitigation, to say, well, we shouldn't do this. Yes, you do it as part of the global community, but you don't do it because you think that Indonesia is going to have a meaningful impact on the adaptation needs of Indonesia, right? Those are separate. You have to separate those out.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. That speaking about Indonesia, we have Elizabeth who are working in the Indonesia project. That's gonna be I just connect with the issue that case of Indonesia as well. That how you see Indonesia or ASEAN country as a whole that could undergo this rapid energy transition, like France country or Germany in this context, talking about the higher penetration of renewable energy. Well, again, still maintaining the affordability of this energy price. To some context is also, Mr. Todd mentioned that But there's something that to be balanced on that. Who would need to cover this? Ms. Elizabeth, about your comment.
Thank you, Benny, for this very interesting question. Yeah, I like the comments from Todd. I think it's very true. You have to think about, okay, who's responsible for the situation we're in? So we should not forget about this. It's very true. I mean, I'm from Germany, and I've been working in Asia for a while. And of course, this question, okay, energy transition in Germany looks rather expensive. We can't do that here in Asia. It doesn't fit. So it's a question that I'm facing quite regularly, and it's a fair enough question. Just quickly looking at Germany, what's the energy transition there? We have different pillars. Prominently, it's to increase the share of renewables. Then we are also trying to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And we also have an energy efficiency component. We also decided now to phase out coal by 2038 and nuclear by 2022. So that puts a lot of pressure right now into reshifting our energy system, and in particular the power system. I think what has been quite successful in Germany is, like, I think the latest figures from last year is we have 46% of power coming from electricity, lots of jobs created, but of course also we have the second highest electricity consumer tariffs in Europe, which stand at roughly 34 US dollar cents. So that's of course quite a brunt to take. When we think about, okay, what does that mean for ASEAN? Can it be done? Can it be repeated? Can ASEAN go on an energy transition? I would say I mean, what we see, I think it's already happening, right? It's you can see that there are more and more renewable energy targets coming in that are being increased. More renewables are installed. We just heard from Vietnam. And I think the big advantage of ASEAN countries right now is that when Germany started on its energy transition, that was the first renewable energy law was in 1991. That's more than 2 decades ago. And yes, renewables were very expensive back then. And through the feed-in tariff system, you could think about it as an upfront investment. A lot of innovation was spurred, costs went down. And I think this is the great advantage for the ASEAN countries, that now renewables are much more cheaper. They are more competitive. They are a good choice rather to look into, to invest into fossil fuels. And yes, it's also true, you need to look into flexibility options. When we then also look into ASEAN countries from the resource base, what they have, look into Germany. We are a northern country. Our solar irrigation is certainly not as high as ASEAN countries. Still, we have now 52 gigawatt of solar installed. So I would say with the resources base, like good solar, lots of biomass, quite a few countries have really good wind potential. Then you have also geothermal and hydro, which can have the opportunity also to provide the flexibility for variable renewables integration. I think that's all beneficial to fast track to emerge on this energy transition. So my point would be, okay, it has already started. The challenges are different. We're at a different time, and there's not one pathway for all, but I think there's lots of opportunities for job creation, for innovation targeted at the ASEAN region with solar cooling and so on. And I think through regional cooperation and getting support from international partners, I think ASEAN can be well on a track to find its own and define its own energy transition.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. And I go back with YK. We are talking about the innovation and also cost need to be pushed on. The end of the day is always, it's like ending the discussion about the cost again. Then can I go back with you, YK, that your experience with some corp, and then how the private sector can also in the front line to pushing this cost down. So it be giving more option for the people. It's not longer about talking the high costs that need to be there, but that how do you see the role of the private sectors in pushing this process faster?
Right. Yeah, the private sector is always trying to make business sense out of all this energy transition. And one way, to either increase the top line, or basically reduce the cost is to do it through innovation. And again, using Sembcorp as an example, we have been investing in R&D and innovation in the energy transition and renewable space to improve the adoption. In terms of the top line, for example, for the suppliers, one example is the REC, the REX platform that we launched at the start of the year. It is one where which aggregates the environmental attributes, the REX, from the renewables globally in the region, and the current liquidity is backed by the renewables that we have in this region. This is a platform that essentially tracks the life cycle of the REX from the time it gets generated, until it's registered, transacted, and then it gets retired. It provides an additional source of revenue, for the renewable projects, and that improves the economics. And that really helps in terms of improving the uptake of renewables in this region. We are also working with quite a few institutes of higher learnings in Singapore. For example, Singapore Polytechnic, where we are working with them to commercialize some technology to improve the recycling of the solar panels, so the used solar panels. So we are aiming to recycle up to 90% of the materials. And again, with recycling, there's a recovery of costs, keeping the cost down, and that further improves, the economics of renewables and the provision of clean energy. We also have a tie-up with Republic Poly, where we are looking at developing agri-voltaics. Agri-voltaics means on the same plot of land where you have your solar. You can also do your farming and your agriculture. So for the same plot of land, you will be able to provide food, and at the same time provide clean and green energy. So a win-win for both industries. So we have been putting in quite a lot of effort in terms of trying to innovate, to keep the cost down, and to bring in additional revenue streams in order to improve the adoptions of renewables in Singapore as well as the region.
Thank you. That's the industry is definitely also in the front line for us in providing the affordable and clean energy in the region. We are 10 minutes before end of our event, but unfortunately we have to stop our very interesting and engaging discussion that we have, hearing various views from the speakers, the great speaker that we have. So unfortunately we have to end it, but before that I would like to request all five great speakers that we have, if you have one short statement on that, how ASEAN, what ASEAN should do in affordable and clean energy. For that, maybe I start with Mr. Thomas, please.
Sure. I was looking at some of the questions in the chat box. So the one thing that we didn't get to touch on that I think is pretty interesting is that it's worth ASEAN taking a very hard look at the new advanced nuclear designs that are not yet on the market but will be coming to market in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of them are going to be especially, if they come as we hope, they will be especially suitable in emerging markets. They'll be smaller, flexible, safer. They're not going to look like any of the plants that Germany is unfortunately shutting down. So don't think of it like that. Think of it like an entirely new way for generating power, reliable baseload power. And we did an assessment of all countries in the world for their readiness to accept this technology, and the ASEAN region has a number of countries that are really ready now and will be perfect markets for this. So I hope people will keep an open mind once we see them come to market.
Thank you. As I thought that I pass next to Dr. Isabel.
Thank you, Benny. I was actually also looking at the chat, and I spotted something else that hasn't been mentioned. So another solution for ASEAN, which actually addresses, the concern about balancing, is, the integrated system, interconnectors between countries, improving interconnections between countries, and that's something that the UK also uses to balance the flexibility of its increasing renewables. So I think, this integrated grid is something that ASEAN is really like a solution that ASEAN is looking at. Another solution that we haven't mentioned a lot here, that Elizabeth mentioned briefly, is about really energy efficiency and being more, the cheapest electricity is the one you do not use. So, as much electricity you can save, then that really reduce the cost of the transition. But otherwise, I think as key message at the end of this session, it's really that we have seen that the economic benefits of the transition to clean energy is there. It cannot be denied. And ASEAN is already on that path. It's already well progressing on that path. And with COP26 next year, the UK is really committed to support ASEAN countries and other countries through the Energy Transition Council. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you, Dr. Isabel. And I passed it to Elizabeth that you have a same view or you have a different view as for your closing statement.
Thank you so much. What I really like about the discussion that it's so broad, a lot of different topics are being touched upon. We heard nuclear, LNG, and so on, and a little bit on, I think clean coal is also a discussion in the ASEAN. I think it's good to talk about all of this. And to look, okay, what are the technology solutions? I think my statement would be really for governments to embrace the opportunities for an energy transition, to show this political will, but also on the other side for younger generations to push the governments to become more ambitious, that there really are opportunities for jobs, for innovation. I think there's really interesting startup cultures in ASEAN. So I think there's a lot of things that can be coming out of ASEAN. And in the end, it's about defining your own energy transition. So it is in your own hands to define what it is and to embrace this as an opportunity.
Hey, thank you, Elizabeth. I say it's our own responsibility to define, and I go with Ms. Queen, the government. That what would be your closing statement on this session?
Thank you, Benny. From the government side, I think not only Vietnam, but all ASEAN countries, the government should have strong commitment for the promoting for green fuel energy. So I think we are at the right way now, but we should have more efforts to harmonize all the resources, and I think for the greener and for our health, it should be affordable. All the things. So we just try keep our trying the best, and we hope for further cooperation with the developed country as we have in the past, and we continue to develop together in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. And then I put WK as the last one. I mean, because at the end of the day, my point of view that everything needs to work businessly. I mean, whether it's economically running or not. So WK, give us your views on this.
I think as long as there is a sustained market demand, the private sectors, Sembcorp and many others will be the ones providing all these innovative, green, sustainable solutions to respond to these clean energy demands. So innovation obviously is a very, very big part of it. Technologies always start off being exotic, and expensive because there was a lack of scale. But time after time, technologies only get cheaper. So I see some questions that's been posted saying that, why is it that we are looking at all these expensive technologies? Because they're expensive today, and that's the reason why, the governments as well as agencies and private sectors, we are all putting in effort to look at how we can further sharpen the costs, looking at substituting the materials, looking at improving the processes, the general direction is that the cost will come down and it will be affordable and clean.
Thank you. Cost is come down. Cross finger that we are doing all the best of our efforts to do that one. That end our moderated discussion. I would like to thank you, everyone. It's very honored. I'm very honored to moderated decision, having to sit down virtually with all of you to discuss this important issue. Not only for ASEAN, but it's also a global issue that we are discussing. Once again, thank you very much for that. Then I'm continuing our roundtable with the last session today after our moderated discussion, and we would like to share with you that's basically from the polls that we have earlier. Is also telling the same story, but the poll is still open, so keep you requesting you to fill up the poll. But for the last session, it's a special session for us, as Dr. Nuki mentioned, that we would like to share with you a sneak peek from the our flagship publication this year, the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook. So we at the ASEAN Centre for Energy, as the think tanks, energy data and knowledge hub, the catalyst for energy cooperation, representing the interests of the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region, working a number of the projects, study and report, and one of our flagship publication is the development of the ASEAN Energy Outlook. And here we would like to also showing you the 6% of the ASEAN Energy Outlook that we developed with all of the ASEAN member states, the expert from the ASEAN member states, under the support from our partner GIZ through the ASEAN German Energy Program. Next slide, please. So there are two important flagship documents will be launched next month at the 38th ASEAN Minister on Energy meeting in Vietnam. Virtually will be hosted virtually by Vietnam on the 17th and 20th of November 2020. So there is two flagship documents. The first one, the ASEAN Plan of Action for the Energy Cooperation. This is a regional energy blueprint that how ASEAN will do its program on energy for the next 5 years, responding to all the issues that we discussed earlier. And we also like to present to you the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook. This the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook complement the ASEAN Plan of Action for the Energy Cooperation Phase 2 and support the creation of pathway for achieving the regional target. Next slide, please. And in this 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, the official publication of the ASEAN on the energy outlook, we have a number of scenario, the baseline scenario responding to what's the current policy existing in every countries in the region. And then we have what we call it APEC target scenario, that how countries in region collectively work together to achieve this target, and compared to that target scenario, and also responding to the discussion that we have today, the SDG number 7 on the providing the clean and affordable energy. And then there are many key points that being addressed to provide a reference for the policymakers, business sector, and everyone about what's going on, what may happen in the next 2 decades under the various thematic insight: power grid, fossil fuels, clean power, efficient AC, and clean cooking, and greener transport. Next slide, please. So full details on that one will be presented when we officially launch the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook at the 38th ASEAN Minister on Energy meeting this November. Will be happen back to back with the ASEAN Energy Business Forum. It will be open obviously with the opening ceremony keynote speech by the Honorable Prime Minister of Vietnam, Nguyen Quoc Boc. For that, would like to invite everyone. Feel free to visit the links provided and get register yourself to learn more about the event and learn more about the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook. So that's my presentation on the sneak peek of our 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook. And then as we pass our time, and then for the closing statement, I would like to again invite Dr. Nuki Agia-Utama to deliver his closing statements to end our roundtables. Dr. Nuki, please. Dr. Nuki, we are not able to hear your voice yet. Reason that. Please, Dr. Nuki, for your closing statement. Unfortunately, we are still not able to hear your what Dr. Nuki. So if you are able to manage the closing statement. Okay. Okay, unfortunately that we have technical treatment, but on behalf of Dr. Nuki Agia-Utama, the Executive Director, we would like to thank you, every single person who are participating and support our event today. So we look forward for the future collaboration. With that, I would like to end our roundtables. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. Have a great day ahead. Thank you. Bye-bye.